Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala in the subject of information technology in paper distributed application development. And this module is about Applet API. In this module, we will learn about the various class and interfaces present in the java.applet package. And also about how to develop an applet class which can be used inside a browser.
In this module, in the last module, we are looking at the applet class. There, I think we have seen up to the life cycle of an applet, fine. But we also started looking at the applet context. Yes, we know there is something called applet context, which is used for interaction with the browser. An applet should be able to interact with the browser. We also came to know about another interface called the Applet Stub. Fine. So in this module, we'll be looking at the remaining things which are related to the remaining methods of the applet class, most of which are derived from the Applet Stub and the Applet Context interfaces. Fine. So let's begin and start looking at the methods from the Applet Stub. Then we'll move on to the methods of the Applet Context, and we'll also relate them with the various methods which we find in the applet class itself. Fine. There are some of those methods which are useful for more convenient methods given in the applet class as compared to what is available in the applet context or even in the applet stub. So let's begin by looking at methods of the applet stub here. Fine. So we have seen the creation process earlier. Yes, what normally happens is the object of applet context is getting created. For every applet, an object of applet stub is created. Applet context corresponds to the browser. Applet stub corresponds to each applet component. Now let's see what is available. What is it that is specific to the applet, which is to be made available to the applet? So that would be nothing but the parameters, something which goes as part of the applet tag. So let's see the methods of applet stub. So in the applet stub, we'll find methods like we have first thing, yes, a reference to the applet context, the common part. So there is a get applet context method returning us the applet context. Fine, that's fine. It's just for giving us the to enable the applet to reach the applet context. Fine, we have this method called get applet context in the applet stub. Fine. So okay. Oh, now one more point. I was also mentioning earlier about the forwarding of methods. So if you look at applet.java, we will find this method called get applet context as a method in the applet class. See, the applet stub is just an interface for a developer, for the applet developer. No, he doesn't know. He doesn't ever get hold of the applet stub. He is simply writing a subclass of the applet. This is a private member of the applet class, would not be available for use. The applet stub is not available for use, but our understanding about what is actually happening. Fine. So if we look into the applet.java, we'll see that the method which has been provided in the applet class is the method called get applet context. And if you look at the code, it is just simply nothing but checking if it is if the applet stub has already been set or not. Applet stub we understand would be set by the set stub method. If the applet stub is set, just simply invoke it, get the applet context from the applet stub object. Fine. So that way everything actually directs to the, so we have methods here in the applet class which are directed to the applet stub or to the applet context. Fine. So one method was get applet context. Another method, yes, we might be interested in knowing the code base, or if there is a code base from where the applet class has been loaded. So that is available to us as a method called get code base. So we have the get code base returning us an object of the URL class. I think we have seen the URL class when we looked at the HTTP protocol. Fine. So that URL class is what is returned by the get code base method in the applet stub. Same method available in the applet class. Fine. The forwarding has been done here also. Fine. Same way, on similar lines, another method which is available in applet stub is the method called get document base. Get document base returning us the URL. Again, this also returns a URL. Which URL? Oh, it's a URL from where the HTML was loaded. The document is referred as HTML. The HTML here is referred as the document. So when we say document base, it's nothing but the place of the HTML file. The HTML from the server. What is the URL of that HTML? So that is what is get document base. Fine. So get code base, get document base. Okay. Another point, another information which is available from the applet tag. Fine, code base was available from applet tag. Similarly, another information which is available from the applet tag is the values for the parameters. So here again we got a method called get parameter. Parameter to this method is the name of the parameter, and it returns a string which is nothing but the value corresponding to that parameter. It would return a null in case you are asking for a parameter which has not been mentioned by the web page developer in the param tag. There's no param tag, but you're saying, okay, that's the one is saying, okay, get parameter. That's code, if a developer is using that code, get parameter. Fine. The web page designer may or may not have opted to use a parameter for that. Fine. So if no parameter, this may return a null value. Fine. So get parameter, that's a method to read the parameter values. Fine. Another thing which corresponds to this applet, stub, one stub per applet. So the stub is also maintained. In the stub, the state of the applet is also being maintained. So whether the current applet is active or not. So we got this method called isActive. Same method again available also in the applet class. IsActive in the applet stub, nothing but whether the applet corresponds to this, which corresponds to this stub, is active or not. Fine. So isActive is that method to know whether a particular applet is active or not. Fine. It's available in the applet class again. Fine. And then okay, so fine. So these are some of the methods of the applet stub which would be available in the applet class again, but applet class is in turn making use of the stub. Okay. Similarly, we also have lots of methods from the applet context which are also being made available in the applet class. For example, one of the methods which I had mentioned earlier about was the method for setting up some message on the status bar of the browser. Or if you want to set up some message on the status bar of the browser, we have a method called set status, show status, and the method name is show status, which takes as parameter a string for the message to be shown on the status bar. This is a method of the applet context, but this also goes as a method on the applet class. The applet class is, the code is very simple. It has to just say get applet context dot show status. That's the code for the show status in the applet class. Fine, because applet class also has the method called get applet context, which it was getting from the stub. Fine. So fine, we have here show status, show message. Fine, show status, which is for showing a message on the status bar. Fine. Like okay. So fine, that is a simple thing, setting up some message on the browser status bar. But what is the browser's main job? The browser's main job, take an input, which is the input to the browser is some URL. For that URL, fetch the content. Fine. So yes, we have a method here. Fine. Called okay. There are very specialized contents. For example, we got a image content. In case there is an image content, fine, there is some image content, there is GIF or JPEG, we know the URL of a image file or image, fine. So we have some GIF, JPEG file available on in the internet somewhere, and we are interested in, our applet is actually interested in using that image somehow. Fine. So yes, as far as Java application is concerned, in Java it's not about, here it's not a question about showing the image, it's a question of fetching the image as an object. Yes, so what we have here is in the applet context, we have a method called get image. Parameter to that is a URL. What it returns is the object of the image class, the java.awt.image. So this image, you get it as an image object, not necessary that it must be rendered or shown somewhere. The image, you can do some manipulation on it, do some analysis on the image, anything you want, it's an image object. fine, not something which is rendered, but just as an object. It's up to you. You can decide to render it also if you like, fine. So you can have your coding accordingly, fine. But yes, getting more important is getting it as a object of image. So get image method in the applet context, but yes, same method again available in the applet class. But in case of the applet class, there is also a more convenient form of the method available. The more convenient form is the get image method taking two parameters, a URL as well as a string which is relative to the URL. Now why I am saying this is going to be more convenient? Oh, because in most cases, creating a URL, no, we don't like to hard code the URL anywhere, right? We may not be hard coding the URL. Most of the time on the server side, we might be maintaining images relative to our document base. In the document, whatever is the folder for the HTML, within that we might have a folder for images, and our images might be lying over there, and we are interested in fetching some image from there. So if that is the case, yes, a more convenient form would be to use this other method which is available only in the applet class. Fine. The method is get image, but parameter, first parameter is a URL, second parameter is a relative to this URL some string specification. And what you can do here is you could, for first parameter, you could simply use the method called get document base. Yes, because it's relative to the document base. Fine. So making it convenient to use that URL. Fine. We are not hard coding what URL. This applet may have been deployed in one particular server. The same applet may also be getting used in another server. No, we don't have to have hard coding of the URL. Let it be relative to from where the document base is loaded. And so that would be a better coding and much easier work for us, for the programmer. So this is a convenience which has been provided in the applet class. As far as applet context is concerned, just one single method. Fine. The other method which uses two forms, it's quite simple code within that method also, because we know a URL can be created from a URL plus a string. So that's fine. So that takes care of, yes, so we got, if we have images to be loaded from any place, yes, we can use the browser to fetch it for us. When I say browser, yes, I'm talking about the applet context. We use the applet context, which in turn is asking the browser to do it. Fine. And then, so images can be fetched. Like image, another kind of content, which is also commonly useful, could for downloading, is the content which is an audio content. You might have a WAV file or something available, a URL for that. There's some audio available on the internet as a resource somewhere. And if you're interested in fetching that, yes, we have this method called get audio clip, again requiring a URL. This is a method in the applet context. It returns an object of the audio clip. Remember, audio clip is an interface in the java.applet package. Audio clip interface has just a few methods. There are 3 methods in this audio clip. Yes, what do we do with the audio content? Audio clip represents an audio content. What do we do with that? One thing is you could simply play it. Another option could be, you may be interested in just not playing it just once, but looping it again and again. So we got a method called play to play it once. We got a method called loop to keep on playing it repeatedly. Fine. And fine. So maybe you just call the method called loop. So it keeps on, it goes in a loop to keep on playing it again and again. It just gets started. And then, okay, if it has been started and it's going in a loop, you would be interested in stopping it. So you have the play, loop and stop. 3 methods in the audio clip interface. Fine. And then, yes, so as far as applet context is concerned, we have just single method called get audio clip to return the object of audio clip from a URL. Fine. If we go back to the applet class, in the applet class corresponding to this, yes, we do have this method called get audio clip, but again a convenience method called get audio clip with 2 parameters. Fine. We understand how it is convenient. We have already seen it in the case of image, get image. So similarly, get audio clip also overloading is done. Fine. To return us a audio clip. Fine. Another more convenient thing could have been, so we have another convenient method again in the applet class. This convenient method is allowing us not to get the audio clip object separately, but directly trying to play the audio. So you can also use the method play. Fine. Applet class provides us the method play where you specify a URL, fine, or you can give a URL and relative to the URL a string can also be given. So directly it's like, the code there would be to get the audio clip from this and then play it also, fine. So in one go, fine. So you directly have a convenient method called play if you are interested in playing a particular audio content just once, fine. So for that purpose, yes, Applet class provides those methods. And so convenient methods in Applet class. Again, then another thing which you could do in the what do we do with the browser? The main thing. Browser. Main thing what we do most of the time. It's showing some content here and there, right? Yes. So for that, again, we have a method here called show document. Fine. So Applet Context has this method called show document. Takes a URL, fine. So whatever is the URL corresponding to that URL, it will fetch the page and show it, but where? So the show document has two parameters, the URL and a string, which is the target. The target here is nothing but a frame, fine. We have these frames, fine. Your HTML page, which is currently being shown in where one of the thing is in Applet. The Applet there is trying to ask the browser to show a particular URL page, fine. So it's passing a URL saying getting the Applet context and asking it to show a document. So show document, giving a URL, but what is this target? Target is nothing but a frame. So you could say, okay, this page which corresponds to this URL needs to be shown in so and so target frame. There are a few special reserved names for the frames. There are some special names available. For example, we have the if you want to open the page in a new tab or maybe a new window, it would be the underscore blank. That is the underscore blank is a special name for the target to be used for specifying that, this is to be shown in a new tab or a page, new tab or window, right? Similarly, we can also say underscore parent. That means the parent frame of the Applet's frame, fine. The Applet is being shown in particular frame. So what is the parent frame of that? So for that we can say underscore parent. That is the target where the URL page needs to be shown. Or you could even mention things like underscore top. That means replace the root level of the browser, fine. So or you could specify the exact name of a frame. If there is a name given to a particular frame, you could also be specifying those also, fine. Or there is another one called underscore self, which means the frame in which the applet is currently working. So that page itself could be replaced with the new page which is specified by the URL, fine. So showing a URL, showing the content of a URL, asking the browser to show content of any URL, that can be done from within an applet code again, fine. So this is what can be done from the applet context. And so applet context has all such methods. Next, continuing further, fine. Applet has these methods available because of the methods from Applet Stub and Applet Context. It is making use of those methods. There are other methods which are not part of the Applet Context or Applet Stub or not enabled from there, which are also part of the Applet class. Yes, Applet class. Of course, I'm not talking about the methods which are inherited methods because from the panel, because those are all related to the GUI. So I'm not talking about GUI at all. Fine. But other than that, yes, we still have a few other methods. One of the other information which may be useful for an applet developer maybe is to know what is the preference of the browser, what is the preference of the user who is using this browser in terms of the language and country settings. If there is some language and country setting, what is the default language and country setting which is preferred by the browser? So that settings can also be read by this. So we have this method called getLocale. We have a class in the java.util package called locale. Locale represents the language and country settings. Yes, later we'll have a module which is related to internationalization, where we'll be talking about the locale class also, fine. There'll be more detailed discussion on the locale class, but just for our understanding here, locale represents the language and country preferences of a user, fine. Okay, so that's his regional settings kind of things. Okay, so we have this thing available in the applet class. So applet has its own method called getLocale to return the preferred locale preference for the browser. Okay. Another thing, yes, there are a couple of methods which as such functionality wise nothing, but they are there more from the point of view of documentation. Okay, we have this method called getApplet Info, which is a method from the which is just a method to return a string. Oh, what is this method for? No, it doesn't do anything for us. It's a method which the application developer, or rather the applet developer, is using to give some information about the applet. So it normally the applet developer puts some copyright message which he wants to and returns here. For example, he'll say, oh, return copyright so and so, and oh, the name of the applet and some copyright, and give some year and all those things. Fine. So it's just a simple method which anyone can override and specify while writing an applet. Similarly, another thing which doesn't affect any functionality but more from the documentation point of view is the method called getParameterInfo. The method getParameterInfo in the applet class is supposed to be overridden by the applet developer to indicate what kind of parameters does his applet expect from a web page designer. What are the parameters which the web page designer should be will be allowed to mention and use in his web pages when he writes the applet tag. So when he puts the applet tag, yes, he's using the param tags. He may use any kind of param tags, but it's only up to the applet to decide what it will be using. So it's rather better for the applet developer to be mentioning, okay, if you use my applet, or these are all the parameters which I will be considering and what are their meanings. So there is this method which the applet developer will use it for which the applet developer would override just to indicate those things. This method called getParameterInfo returns a two-dimensional string array. The two-dimensional string array would be an array where the first level array, fine, it's an array of a string array, right? Two-dimensional array means array of a string array. So each string array, internal string array, is one per parameter supported by the applet, and each array contains first object in that array would be at the 0th index would be the name of the parameter, second would be the type of the parameter, and third would be some information about that parameter. Right? So that way we have we have these methods called getParameterInfo returning us a two-dimensional array of string. And these are the methods which a particular applet developer may like to try to override and give information about. Fine. So this is what we have in the applet class. Fine. I think with this we conclude the discussion on the applets. Fine. You can have your applications created. If you have done any application using normal GUI and you would like to put it on the web, you could have your classes, you could create your applet class, make it available as part of make it available to some web page designer, make it available there. Yeah, another point I would like to make here is many times there are some wrong impressions which have been created. Yes, we do have certain tool here. It is a useful tool, no doubt about it. We have one tool called Applet Viewer. It's a useful tool. I mention it as a tool. But many times it has been taken, oh, it's actually something to be used for developing an applet. No, it's just for testing how the applet is going to look. It's just for getting the look of the applet and not the actual deployment part. Actual deployment of applet is always done behind a server. You need to have a web server and have the applets deployed over there. Fine. As you develop any application, don't make use of the, don't ask the end user to be using the applet viewer in order to use them. Fine. Applet viewer is just there as a testing tool in order to get a feel of, oh, how will it look in a browser if it is used, or whether or the buttons and components GUI components which I'm creating, or whether they are there, how does it work, to get all that thing. Fine, clear? So as far as applet is concerned, yes, what we have seen in an earlier module, we have gone through the life cycle of the applet, and in this module we have gone through the various other methods available in the applet class, and this should enable us to write some applets, real code applets. Of course, what you will need as another important part of applet development would be the capabilities of the GUI capabilities. So that is something which we have assumed here, that you are already knowing about the GUI. So AWT panel and other things, you know already how to use them, you know the event handling there, all that thing should work in the applet here. Our discussion here has been more on the usage of an applet by the browser, and how the browser and the interaction between the browser and the applet that takes place.
So in summary, what we have seen about applet. In the earlier module, we have seen the life cycle of an applet. In this module, we have gone through the various other methods available in the applet class. Fine. This should enable us to write some good applets. Fine. What we would also need is GUI components, that is something which we have assumed here. Fine. We should be knowing AWT event handling, all these things should work in the applet here. Fine. So, our emphasis here has been on the usage of applet within a browser and the interface between applet and the browser. Okay, that's it. Thank you, friends.